Radio Network YouTube live channel. And I am your host, Mary O'Malley. And today we are exploring healing and being healed by our compulsions. Just take a moment and just let that kind of roll through you. Not only healing our compulsions, but being healed by our compulsions. So, before we begin to shift our relationship from one of something's wrong with me, I've got to stop this, I've got to fix this, this is a problem in my life and this isn't okay. 2, one where your compulsions are actually an ally on your journey through life. We need to first of all look at what is a compulsion. And in this work, it's any recurring activity that you use to manage your experience, over which you have little or no control. Another way you could define a compulsion is the act of turning away from yourself rather than turning towards. So we can be compulsive about most anything in our lives. We can be compulsive about biting our fingernails, about over shopping, about seeing porn on the web. Of course, we can be compulsive about the standard things, food, alcohol, drugs. But we can also be compulsive about over-exercising or overworking. Remember, a compulsion is any recurring activity that you use to manage your experience in which you have little or no control over. So many of our compulsions, we aren't even aware that they're compulsions until the access to them is taken away. Let's say your compulsion is to your phone and to texting and to looking up stock reports and seeing how your favorite team is doing. And then you go on a vacation and the island you're on doesn't have any internet connection. And you begin to feel a kind of anxiousness, a urge to desperately try to find internet connection. And many of our compulsions are hidden. We hide them from other people. It's the food that you eat only in your car. And then, of course, you stop at the local gas station on your way home and you throw away all of the containers for your food. Or it's the bottle of alcohol that you hide in the toilet, in the bathroom, or it's the searching on the internet, maybe to porn sites. There can be other sites that are not okay in your world. And of course, you erase them from your history, on your web. So what do we do with all of these compulsions, the ones we hide from other people, the ones we hide from ourselves, and the ones that we desperately try to control, only to be controlled by them? So what we usually do is try to control them. We try to stop them. Oh my God, I went on so many diets. I started overeating when I was 10. And I would diet and binge and fast and binge, and it just kept on escalating until when I was 22, I gained 27 pounds in a year. 97 pounds in a year. And that is going from one hospital scale to another hospital scale. And such self-hate, such despair. And of course, I was washing a lot of that food down with alcohol and taking every drug I could get my hands on. Does control work? Well, 98% of every pound that is lost in the United States is gained back plus some within a year and a half. That is the U.S. Surgeon General report. 98%. Just be amazed that all we do is we keep on going back to try to control our compulsions, even though the evidence is there that it doesn't work. And if we do become able to muscle one of our compulsions down, another one will take over. So what we try to do is control, and our compulsions end up controlling us. The other way to say is what we resist persists. Why are we so compulsive? It's just such a fascinating question to ask. So in my book, The Gift of Our Compulsions, I started with this story, and it's called The House of Our Being. And just imagine the most beautiful house you could imagine, with a wonderful yard and lots of beautiful flowers and toys to play on. And this is what it was like when we were young. We lived in our bodies. We lived as ourselves. Now, some people leave, like I did, within the first year because my environment was so painful. But other people can remember staying connected to life till they were 6, 7, 8. But we're all destined to have the house of our being begin to become closed off. So imagine in this house, that you begin to close the curtains on the beautiful windows that bring all the light in, bring in the joy of being alive. And then imagine that you begin to lock parts of yourself into boxes, and you duct tape them, and you put them in different rooms in the house of your being, and you close the curtains in that room, and you shut the door. That's what happened to all of us when we were growing up. We were alive. Life flowed through us. There was no resistance to what is. There was no trying to control what is. Sadness, madness, gladness danced through us like the clouds dance through the sky. But slowly, because most of us were raised by what I call unconscious giants, slowly we discovered that it wasn't okay to be exuberant, or it wasn't okay to cry. Big girls don't cry, or it wasn't okay to be angry. Don't be angry at me. Or it was only okay to be excellent. I talked to a woman once that got all A's on a report card, and her father asked her why she didn't get A pluses. Oh my goodness. So slowly and surely, we left the house of our being. We started holding our breath. There was a study done once of children and their breathing patterns, and all the children were breathing their natural pattern, just like dogs and cats breathe. Their whole trunk was involved with their breath. And not one of them was breathing that way when they went to first grade. To first grade. Because it's in those first 6 years of our life that we really begin to get an idea of who we are, get a self-image, and we form and shape it by, the what's in our environment. And slowly and surely we learn it's not okay to be this, but it's okay to be that. But you should be more of that. And we hold our breath. We tighten our bodies. And we run away to the addict in the house of our being. But all is not lost, We're now caught in our minds. That's where most people are. They're in the attic of their minds, thinking their way through their lives, rather than actually being here for life, being life. But there's a big screen TV up in the attic, and you can watch, programs on anything. You can watch romantic programs and just, imagine that you will find your soulmate, or you can watch football teams that, you choose the one that wins, all the time, or you can watch beautiful videos about birds. And every once in a while, you hear some bird song outside the attic. And it causes this funny feeling inside of you, this longing inside of you. But then you just put on another video, another thinking about birds. And that is what it is like for most people. They're not here for life. They are not living in the essence of themselves, which is being. Well, all those parts of yourself that you boxed up and duct taped, those parts like your sadness, the tears that we all carry that you discovered weren't okay in your environment when you were young, or the anger, or the loneliness, or the deep craving for something more. And so you have a meltdown at Christmas because you only got 8 presents rather than 6, and then you were judged for it. All these parts we lock up inside, the parts that we decide are not okay. And then we run away to the attic and live in our minds. But those parts are pretty doggone good about getting out of their boxes. And they come up the stairs and they knock on the door because they want to be included in your world. Those parts that somebody just ended your relationship through a text, and you just are heartbroken. And so you go find that bottle in the toilet, in the bathroom. Or a boss has just shamed you at work, and you get in your car on your way home and you stop at the fast food place and you buy 2 of everything. And then, of course, you stop at the gas station before you get home and throw all the packages away. Or somebody said they were going to call you, a dear friend, and they don't call and they don't call. And you find yourself biting your fingernails until they are bloody. What I'm trying to say here with this house of your being metaphor is that what we did was that we hid so many parts of ourselves, the parts of our wholeness, deep inside of us. And they have a tendency to pop out at times. And usually what we do is we meet them with our compulsive activities. We may have had a horrible day at work and we go and we over-exercise for 3 hours, not understanding that something is close to the surface, something that is wanting to cry or wanting to rage. And what we do is we turn away from ourselves. But being healed by our compulsions is the art of turning towards, the art of beginning to answer the door when one of these parts come up the staircase and knock on the door, rather than turning up the volume of your TV and ignoring this request from deep inside of you. Something wants to be seen. Something wants to be heard. So, compulsions, rather than being something wrong that we must control, and we've done that enough to finally see that this doesn't work, and we secretly believe everybody else can control them, but we can't. But the statistics are there. Controlling compulsions only fuels them. And if you can muscle one to the ground, another one will take over. Why? Because our compulsions are our survival system. When it started when we were young, and all those different feelings that there was nobody there to just listen. Like if we had a fairy godmother and, our brother had taken our toy and taunted us with it. And we were just crying and crying, trying to get it, and he was holding it right out of our reach. And so we bit him. And he goes crying to your mother, and your mother comes in and gives you a spank and sends you to your room. What are you feeling there? So misunderstood. Can you feel the agony of that? And what we do with it is we learn how to stuff it. And for a while, we can just try that, but it's not enough. So we start going to compulsions. Whether it's overeating like I did, I started when I was 10, or whether it's sex for a teenager, or whether it's marijuana, or even, more challenging drugs, whether it's trying to be perfect and exhausting ourselves for staying up at night because we're just so desperate to get the A pluses because our dad wasn't happy with the A's. Or we start starving ourselves and we become anorexic. All of these are the ways, and many, many other ways, that we have tried to keep at bay those heartaches, those feelings of not being enough, that sense of loss, that sense of loneliness, that sense of being rejected over and over again. We learn how to stuff them, to numb them by turning away and getting busy with something else. Now, our compulsions are actually our ally. If you can begin to get beyond the idea of controlling them, and I'm not saying stop Weight Watchers or stop AA or stop going to your therapist. We're not stopping anything. We're beginning to add something that understands that your compulsions are not the enemy, They're just a finely crafted survival system that started when you were very young. And they deeply trained you that survival is in turning away. And for a while in our lives, that did work. But now, turning away means like running away from a bear in the woods. You know, we are taught here in the Northwest when we're out backpacking to turn, stand, lift our hands above our heads, and just stand there quietly. And if you are not between a mother bear and her cubs, the 99% chance that the bear will move. There is 100% chance if you run away, the bear will run after you. It's just in their DNA. If we run away from what we are actually experiencing inside, not only will the feelings run after us, but they'll have babies, and our compulsions will get stronger and stronger and stronger. So the first step in changing your relationship with your compulsions is understanding that they were a survival system as you were growing up and into your adulthood, that you needed them because you didn't have the skill to turn and actually meet and actually allow to release all these feelings that you bury deep inside that fuel your compulsions from underneath your everyday awareness. Compulsions are also our ally because whenever they are here, they are always trying to take care of something. There is something close to the surface, something that you had formerly hidden inside of you that you don't know yet how to be with. So your compulsions, rather than something that's bad or wrong about you, can begin to become your guide. This is how I came from somebody that gained and lost and gained and lost, I swear, thousands of pounds. And once gained 97 pounds in a year. I mean, just imagine, that takes a hell of a lot of eating. To someone now that eats what I want to eat and my body stays the same way. How could that be? And it's been this way for a couple of decades now. Because I learned the art of turning towards. I learned the art of stopping mainly trying to control my compulsions to beginning to become curious about them, to beginning to bring my attention into my immediate experience when I wanted to be compulsive. What does that look like? Well, the best description I could ever give of it is a time for me that my compulsions came, well, mainly my food compulsions came roaring back after being quiet for many years. And this was on 9/11. And I woke up that morning and the phone rang and a friend called and said, turn on the news. And I turned on the news as the second plane was flying into the second tower. And then the phone rang and friends and clients and loved ones calling and calling because of the deep shock and the heartache of 9/11. And then I had a group come. And it was a very powerful group because everybody had been cracked open. And now it was 2:30. And when that last person left and I closed the door, I had an overwhelming urge to go to the grocery store and eat everything. It just shocked me because it had been so long since that urge had been here. And it kind of took me over like a tsunami wave. And I made it all the way into my bedroom where I keep my purse. And I made it all the way out to the door that takes me to my car. And all of a sudden, curiosity kicked in. What's going on here? And the compulsive one inside of me said, literally said, don't give me any of that awakening shit. We're going to the store. There was a panic inside of me. There was this overwhelming urge to just eat and eat and eat. And that is what I had lived in that year that I gained 97 pounds. And I stopped for a moment and I said, I remind you that when I take care of myself in that way, I don't feel very well the next day. And the compulsive one said, I don't care. We're going to the store. I know all of you have known this place where it's just, you just got to get to your compulsion. And I said, I'll tell you what, give me a few minutes on the porch. And if you want to go to the store, after 5 minutes on the porch, we will go to the store, but I will go with you. I will bring my awareness there that something is very scared and you are trying to take care of it. Because I had created a healthy relationship with the compulsive one inside of me, it wasn't the enemy. It wasn't something I was doing bad or wrong. It was my ally. I wouldn't have survived if I hadn't been able to numb myself with food. The heartache was so great. So in this moment, the compulsive one said, okay, 5 minutes. So I go and sit on the chair on my front porch. And I live in a little cottage that's nestled under a 154-year-old maple tree. I call her the grandmother. And her leaves were starting to turn golden. And it was a sunny day. And I was whirling and spinning. So what I do is whenever I find myself caught, I always go to my breath to begin with. Because when you're caught, you're in the fight or flight. And that was the panic. I got to get to the store. I got to get to the store. I got to get to the store. And in that breathing, the long, slow out breath, because I've done it a lot, that slowly that panic began to calm down just a bit. Enough. So I could be curious about what I was experiencing. And as soon as I pulled my attention out of the whirling and spinning in my head and brought it into my immediate experience, I noticed a fiery fist in my solar plexus. It felt like it was either going to explode or implode. And I realized that my mind was afraid of it. And because I've done this work for a while, I reminded my mind, it's just a sensation. Let's go explore it. And I brought my attention there and I just noticed how big it was and how deep it was. Just having my attention there with those questions. Does it move around? Does it have a definite shape or does it change shapes? This allowed my attention to begin to rest there. And as it rested there, what was trapped in that fiery fist in my solar plexus area began to speak to me. And I cried. There was just so much grief, grief that I had been afraid of, that I wanted to turn away from by going and eating. And instead I turned towards. And there was tears, and I cried, and grief. And I kept on saying to the grief, I see you, I understand. There was grief for the people that had lost their lives. There was grief for the children that had lost their parents. There was grief for the world. There was even grief for the terrorists who were living a life that action made sense. This took about 10 minutes. But the compulsive one didn't say, it's been 5 minutes. Because it could see that I was taking care of what it had been trying to take care of by going to the store. It was such deep grief that it brought forth the old knee-jerk reaction of turning away, of running away. And I had done that enough that I knew I could remember, and it took me a long time to remember this, that doesn't lead to any good place. The compulsion says, oh, I'm going to make you feel so much better. And maybe for a few moments or a few minutes it does. And then it turns all crazy again. So I'd explored my compulsive one enough and what it brought to me to know that why don't I give myself 5 minutes before I go to the store? And when I got up from that chair and walked in the house and closed the same door that I had closed, 15 minutes before? With a rage I mean, it was almost like a panic attack that I had to get to the store to eat and eat and eat. There was not one iota, not one little bit of need to go to the store, because I had taken care of what my compulsive one was trying to take care of. Now, this is not the quick fix. As my main teacher, Stephen Levine, once said, it's the work of a lifetime. But as far as I can see, it's the way out. That imagine a beautiful ocean of being. And on that ocean is a bubble. And I call it the bubble of struggle. In fact, I say in my book that our core compulsion is to struggle. That's what we learned when we were so very young. And all the other compulsions are just an attempt to numb out from the constant unease and sometimes deep heartache and stress that come from our addiction to struggle. So on that sea is floating this bubble, and I call it the bubble of struggle. And the wonderful thing about compulsions is they will not be healed through control, but they can be healed through curiosity, through connection, through compassion. They are not your enemy. They are your guide. And everything that the compulsive one inside of you is trying to numb, trying to make go away, is a part of your wholeness. A whole human being is one that all the parts have a space in our hearts. Another way you could say that is our heart has room for everything. I say this is not the quick fix, but it is the way out. Because I was a human being that all I wanted to do was kill myself. And I hated myself the third time I tried to kill myself because I was even a failure at suicide. And now there is not one part of me and not one part or anything that I have done on my journey, anything I have thought, anything I have done to hurt myself or somebody else that is not now nestled in my heart. That's what it means to be a whole human being. So in this moment, let go of judging yourself for being compulsive. Let go of the idea that you are a failure for not being able to control your compulsions. It is a guarantee. As soon as you try to control your compulsions, an equal and opposite resistance will come up because our mind is dualistic. Control doesn't work. So you're not a failure. You're not a failure for having become compulsive, and you're not a failure for having been unable to control them. I couldn't control them, and I almost died of my compulsions. And then life taught me how to be curious, how to begin to see what I was experiencing rather than trying to control it. The joy that came in my life when I discovered how to no longer be afraid of the deep fear that I took on when I was young. And fear isn't even a big enough word. Terror is getting close. The joy that I experienced when I knew I didn't have to turn away from it anymore or get lost in it, that I could meet it, that I could begin to befriend this scared one inside of me. Just like you can befriend the scared one, the alone one, the one that feels it's not enough or too much or just not okay as you are. In my book, What's in the Way is the Way, I call these spells that we've all taken on, these ideas, just like a spell. A spell is something that's laid over the top of you. It's not true, and it can be lifted. You are not this bubble of struggle that you crawled into when you were very young. You are the ocean of being that the bubble is resting upon. And if you allow it, your compulsions can become your guide back into life, back into allowing every single part of you back into your heart. If this calls to you, I would say you can buy The Gift of Our Compulsions, or I have CDs that talk about this. I have a class that I'm giving that is coming up at the end of January. I have a class on my website that's downloadable that you can watch at any time. It is important to hang out with this way of viewing yourself and your compulsions. It's almost like learning a language. You've learned the language of struggle. You've learned the language of resistance and control and trying and doing. And if you're honest with yourself, that has never, ever brought you the lasting peace that you long for. But you can learn this language. And in learning a language, it's important to hang out with this language, whether you study it on your own with books and CDs, or you come into classes, or I have groups also, and I do phone counseling. If this calls to you, if this way out of endless struggle calls to you, if this way out of fighting with your compulsions calls to you, give yourself the gift of learning this language, the language of the aware heart, and know the joy that comes from returning, from opening again to the field of being, of joy, of peace that you truly are, that has never left you, but you have not been able to connect with it because you live in the opaque bubble of struggle. There is a way out. There is a way to come home. I also invite you to come explore with me at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. every Thursday, Eastern Time, on my radio show, What's in Your Way is the Way. And we talk about all these moving pieces we've talked about today. We talked about the power of curiosity, the healing of compulsions, the ability to unhook from the judging quality of your mind so you can accept yourself as you are. We talk about how to have healthy relationships, and on and on and on. And you can find that by going to Dream Vision 7 Radio Network and click on Mary O'Malley. You can also go to my website, www.maryo'malley.com, and there is a link to Dream Visions on my website. Thank you so much for exploring with me. May you become a part of the healing of our planet.